Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are doing something that feels, well, honestly, it feels a little meta.
A little. I'd say very meta.
Right. We are usually here diving into history or technology or, psychology. But today, we are turning the lens on the very act of learning itself.
We're doing a deep dive into a book about how to read books.
Exactly. And it sounds so deceptively simple when you put it like that. How to read.
It does. It's like doing a deep dive on how to breathe or how to walk. It's something you just assume you already know how to do.
I thought the same thing. I picked up this book. It's the classic text, How to Read a Book by Mortimer Adler and Charles Van Doren. And my very first instinct was, okay, come on. I'm an adult. I have a degree.
Right. I'm literally reading the cover right now.
Exactly. I'm holding this book. My eyes are scanning the letters. Clearly, I know how to read. But then right there in the preface, the authors hit you with this incredibly provocative statement.
It's an amazing hook.
It really is. They explicitly say, and I'm quoting here, this is a book for readers who cannot read.
It's a slap in the face, really. It's designed to be.
It felt like an insult. My first thought was, if I'm reading that sentence, surely I can read.
Oh.
So what's going on here? Is this some kind of Zen riddle, or are they just trying to be rude from page 1?
It definitely stings a little, but no, they aren't just being rude. What they're doing is highlighting this massive paradox in how we even define literacy.
Oh.
We tend to think of reading as, a binary skill. It's on or off. You either know your ABCs and can decode words on a page, or you don't. You're literate or you're illiterate.
Right, it's a switch.
But Adler and Van Doren are arguing that what we typically call literacy, just that basic decoding of symbols, is the absolute basement level. It's the ground floor.
So it's not the whole building.
Not even close. They use this great analogy like saying you know how to play the piano just because you can hit the keys and make a sound.
Ah, okay, I see. So there's a difference between just making noise and actually playing a Beethoven sonata.
Precisely. You've hit the nail on the head. They distinguish between two completely different activities that we lump together under the word reading. There's reading for information, and then there's reading for understanding.
Okay, let's unpack that distinction, because I feel like I read all day long. Emails, news headlines, social media feeds, Slack messages. I am just drowning in reading.
And 99% of that is very likely reading for information. Think about it. When you read a weather report that says it's going to rain on Tuesday,
Right.
or a news article about some celebrity scandal, or even a basic memo from your boss, is your mind being stretched? Is it a workout?
No, not at all. I already know what rain is. I know what Tuesday is. My mind is just connecting two things it already understands.
Exactly. The material is on the same level as your mind. You're essentially just adding new data points to a database that already exists in your head.
So I'm not changing my mind. I'm just filling it.
You're just filling it with more stuff. You're not changing the structure of your mind. That's information.
Okay, so that's the basement level. What is reading for understanding then?
Reading for understanding is what happens when you decide to tackle material that is, quite literally, better than you are.
Better than me. Ouch. That hurts my ego a little bit.
It should. That's the whole point. It means the writer, the author, has an insight or a depth of knowledge or a perspective that you simply do not possess.
So there's an inequality.
A huge inequality. They have something you don't. And the entire goal of this kind of reading is to bridge that gap. The book is the tool. You have to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps from a state of understanding less to a state of understanding more.
And the really crucial part, the catch, is that there's no teacher in the room to help you.
That's a challenge. If you're in a classroom, the teacher can see you're confused. They can pull you up. But with a book, you have to elevate your own mind all by yourself solely through the power of operating on those symbols on the page.
It's an internal process.
Completely. And they argue it's one of the most complex intellectual operations a human being can perform.
That makes their original statement, for readers who cannot read, makes so much more sense now. If you hand me a graduate-level textbook on neurosurgery right now, I can read the words. I can pronounce myocardial infarction.
You can sound out the syllables.
I can read the sentences, and they're grammatically correct. But do I understand it? Not a chance.
Exactly. In the face of that text, you are functionally illiterate. You can decode, but you cannot read for understanding.
And their point is that for most of us, when we pick up a great book, something by Plato or Kant or even a really dense literary novel, we are, in that moment, functionally illiterate.
That's the argument. We skim, we get the gist, we look for the plot points, but we don't actually do the hard work of bridging that gap in understanding.
This brings us right to their critique of the modern school system.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, for a book that was originally written in the 1940s, this section felt like it could have been written yesterday.
Oh, it's a withering critique. They call it the defeat of the school.
They really don't hold back.
Not at all. They argue that our education system, for all its successes, has really only produced basic literacy. Almost everyone can read road signs and newspapers and websites, and that's great.
Right.
But it has profoundly failed to teach the art of deep reading. We are taught to read for memory.
Read this chapter, there's going to be a quiz on Friday. I remember that so clearly.
We all do. You memorize the bolded terms, you memorize the key dates, you regurgitate them on the test, you get your A, and then you forget it all a week later.
So you pass the exam, but have you wrestled with the argument? Have you internalized the logic?
Usually no.
Yeah.
And this leads to what they call the Bachelor of Arts paradox. We produce all these college graduates who are certified as educated, but when you put a complex text in front of them, without a professor to guide them, they're lost.
There was that one story in the book that just hammered this home for me. The anecdote about the law students.
Yes, that is the perfect illustration of the problem. So the author was teaching a class of law students. These are graduate students, supposedly the cream of the crop.
Right. They're not slackers.
Not at all. And they were reading John Locke's Second Treatise of Government, which is a foundational text for American democracy. And the professor asks them what seems like a simple question. He asks, what does Locke mean when he uses the word passion?
Okay. And I'm assuming these law students, they've done the reading, they've probably highlighted the whole book.
Oh, they could quote it perfectly. They were like human search engines. They could tell you passion appears on page 12, line 4. They could recite the entire sentence where the word appeared.
But that wasn't the question.
That wasn't the question. The professor pushed them. Okay, but what does he mean by it? How does the concept of passion limit human reason in his argument? How does that idea justify the need for government in the first place? Silence. Total silence.
They were stumped.
Completely stumped. They had the words, but they didn't have the ideas. They were like high-fidelity tape recorders. They could play back the audio perfectly, but they couldn't process the signal.
That is actually terrifying. Because those are the people who go on to become our lawyers and our judges and our politicians.
It's deeply terrifying. It suggests we have a society full of people who can decode text, but cannot actually understand complex thought. And that's a fragile situation for democracy.
So I guess the mission of this deep dive today is to try and fix that, at least for ourselves. Adler and Van Doren provide a very clear roadmap for how to stop being a tape recorder and start being a true reader.
It's a very practical, step-by-step guide.
Okay, so here is our roadmap for the hour. We're going to break this all down. First, we're going to look at what they call the art of activity, what it actually feels like and means to read actively.
The mindset, exactly.
Yeah, yes. Then we're going to walk through the 3 distinct ways or levels of reading they outline. It's like a 3-step process. There's structural, interpretive, and critical reading.
And we'll go through them one by one.
And finally, we're going to talk about why any of this matters, not just for getting smarter, but for what they argue is essential for personal freedom and for democracy itself.
It's a heavy agenda, but it's a really necessary one.
Absolutely. So let's start with section 1, the art of activity. The authors seem absolutely determined to destroy this idea that reading is a passive thing.
Right, the idea that it's like watching Netflix or just letting music wash over you.
Exactly. And they use a sports analogy that I found incredibly helpful to visualize this. They talk about baseball.
It's the perfect analogy, I think. We usually think of communication in a very one-sided way. The writer is the active one. They're doing all the work, speaking, writing, projecting.
And the reader is just the bucket.
The reader is the passive bucket. Yeah, just sitting there trying to catch the water. Adler says, no, that's completely wrong. Think of the writer as the pitcher. The pitcher initiates the motion. They throw the ball.
And the reader is the catcher.
The reader is the catcher. And anyone who's ever seen a baseball game knows that catching a 95-mile-an-hour fastball is not a passive activity.
No way. If you're passive, you're going to get hurt.
If the catcher is passive, if they just stand there with their glove hanging loosely, that ball is either going to hit the dirt or it's going to break their hand. It's an error, a failure of communication.
To catch the ball, you have to position yourself. You have to anticipate the pitch, the curve.
You have to reach out and firmly grasp the object that's coming at you. The catcher actively terminates the motion that the pitcher started. It is an equally active participation in the game.
I love that image. If you're reading a book and your mind is drifting or you're just kind of scanning the lines while you're thinking about what to have for dinner,
You're not catching.
you're not catching. You're letting the ball drop over and over again.
Exactly. A good reader, an active reader, actually signals for the pitch. You're anticipating. You are actively grasping for the writer's intent. And this whole idea of activity is crucial because of the difference they point out between instruction and discovery.
Right. This is where they distinguish between learning from a living, breathing teacher versus learning from a book.
Think about it. If I'm your teacher and I'm standing here in front of you and I'm explaining a concept, let's say it's quantum mechanics, and you get a confused look on your face.
I can see that look.
I can see it. I can stop. I can rephrase the idea. I can use a different analogy. I can ask you, hey, what part didn't you get? We can have a real dialogue.
But a book can't see me sitting on my couch looking confused.
A book cannot see your confused face. A book is what Adler calls a dead teacher.
That sounds a little morbid.
It's meant to be a little jarring. The author isn't there. They can't answer your questions. They can't rephrase what they said. They wrote what they wrote, and that's it. It's final.
So if you want to understand, you have to provide the other half of that dialogue yourself.
You have to. You have to be the one asking the questions of the book, and then you have to work like a detective to find the answers in the book.
So you have to play both roles. You're the student asking, what on earth does this mean?
Mm-hmm.
And you're also the teacher who has to go find the answer in the text.
Precisely. And to help with that, to give us a framework, the authors give us 4 basic questions. They say you must ask these 4 questions of every single book you read for understanding. It's like a mantra.
I feel like we should get these tattooed on our forearms or something.
It honestly wouldn't be the worst idea. So, question 1. What in general is being said?
The big picture.
The big picture, the main theme, the overall structure. Question 2. How in particular is it being said?
Okay, so this is getting into the weeds.
This is the weeds. What are the key terms? What are the main arguments? What's the logical flow? Question 3. Is it true?
This is the critical judgment part.
This is where you talk back.
Yeah.
You can't just swallow it whole. Is it true in whole or just in part? Are there flaws? And then question 4. What of it?
The so what question.
The so what? Why does this matter? If what the author says is true, what are the consequences for me, for the world? How should I change my thinking or my actions?
You know, that last one, what of it, is the one I think most people, myself included, skip all the time. We read a history book about the fall of the Roman Empire, and we go, okay, cool, Romans had aqueducts.
Right. Facts and figures.
But asking what of it forces you to connect it. It forces you to ask, okay, what does the fall of Rome teach me about the political situation in my own country today?
Exactly. Passive reading maybe gets you through question 1, you get the gist. But active reading, really catching that ball, requires you to wrestle with all 4.
Okay, so we know we need to be active catchers now. So let's get into the mechanics. How do we actually do this? The authors break deep reading down into those 3 ways or levels: structural, interpretative, and critical. Let's start with the first one, structural analysis.
Okay, so the metaphor here shifts from the baseball field to the doctor's office. This first reading is the X-ray.
The X-ray, I like that.
Yes. Adler says every good book has a skeleton that's hidden beneath the flesh of its words.
The flesh being the style, the anecdotes.
All right, the flowery language, the stories, that's the stuff that makes it beautiful and readable, but the skeleton is the pure logic. It's the framework holding the entire thing up. And your job in this first reading is to X-ray the book to see those bones.
But without destroying the flesh. You're not dissecting a corpse.
No, this is crucial. It's not vivisection. You're not killing the book to see how it works. You're using an X-ray to see the underlying structure without destroying the life of the book.
So how do we do that? They give us 4 rules for this X-ray process. The first one is classify the book.
And it sounds incredibly basic, almost insulting, but you have to know what kind of book you are holding.
Yeah.
And you'd be really surprised how often people mess this up. Is it a novel? Is it history? Is it philosophy? Is it science?
Why does that matter so much at the outset? I mean, a book is a book, isn't it?
Well, would you read a recipe for lasagna the same way you would read a love poem by Shakespeare?
I certainly hope not. Although that could be a very passionate lasagna.
Yeah. Laughs, exactly. The goal of reading each is completely different. And the big distinction they make right away is between practical and theoretical books.
Okay.
A practical book is a how-to book. It's telling you how to do something. A theoretical book is telling you that something is the case.
So a book like How to Win Friends and Influence People is practical.
Really practical. But a book on, say, The social psychology of influence would be theoretical. It's explaining a phenomenon, not giving you a five-step plan.
Got it.
And even within the theoretical books, you have to make finer distinctions. Is it history? That's primarily a narrative of particular events in the past. Is it science? That deals with general laws and repeatable experiments. Is it philosophy? That deals with universal truths that you can't necessarily test in a lab, but that are part of human experience.
And if you read a philosophy book expecting it to give you scientific data, you're going to think it's a terrible book.
Of course, because you're judging it by the wrong standard. You're bringing the wrong set of expectations to the game.
Okay, that makes sense. Rule number 2 for the X-ray. State the unity. This feels like the elevator pitch rule.
It is exactly that. You must be able to state what the whole book is about in a single, clear sentence, or at most a short paragraph. If you can't do this, you haven't really grasped the unity of the book. You're still just seeing a bunch of disconnected parts.
They use the Odyssey as an example here. Now, if you ask me off the cuff to summarize the Odyssey, I'd probably say something like, well, it's a story about this hero, Odysseus, and he leaves the Trojan War, and he fights the Cyclops, and he deals with some witches, and he sails past the sirens, and then he eventually gets home.
Right, which is true, but that's a summary of the plot. It's just a list of things that happen in sequence.
It's not the unity.
It's not the unity. The authors would say the unity is something more like, it's the story of a man trying to get home to his wife, who is being besieged by suitors, while he faces supernatural obstacles put in his way by the gods who are angry with him.
That feels different. It's more focused.
It captures the central drive of the book. It's the core conflict. It's the spine that holds all of those individual episodes, the Cyclops, the sirens together.
Let's try a modern example. What about, say, the original Star Wars? What's the unity there?
Okay, good one. So the plot summary would be, a farm boy gets a message from a princess, meets a wizard, blows up the Death Star.
Right. List of events.
But the unity, the structural soul of it, might be something like, a young man discovers his hidden destiny in a galactic civil war and must choose between the path of selflessness and the temptation of power in order to restore hope to the universe.
Okay, I see the difference now. One is a list of what happens. The other is the central idea that drives what happens.
Exactly. And you have to find that central idea to really see the skeleton.
Okay, on to rule number 3. Enumerate the parts.
So this uses the house analogy. A book is like a house. It has a general shape, a blueprint, that's the unity we just talked about. But a house also has rooms, and those rooms are connected by hallways and doors.
And a reader needs to be able to map that out.
You need to be able to say, okay, the author accomplishes this grand plan in, say, 3 major parts. Part 1 is about the history of the problem. Part 2 is about their proposed solution. Part 3 deals with the objections.
It's basically outlining the book after you've read it.
It is. You're mapping the organized many that make up the one whole. If you can't show how Chapter 4 connects logically to Chapter 5, you're basically lost in the house just wandering from room to room.
And finally, for this structural reading, rule number 4 is define the problem.
This is so critical. Great books are not just random collections of thoughts. They are written to solve a problem. The author started with a question that was gnawing at them.
Like, does God exist? Or, what is the best form of government?
Or, why do apples fall from trees instead of floating up? You, the reader, need to identify the specific question or set of questions the author is trying to answer. If you don't know the question, the answer they provide won't make any sense.
Okay, so that's the skeleton. We've X-rayed the book. We know what kind of house it is. We have the floor plan. We know why it was built. Now we're ready to move on to section 3, the second way of reading interpretation.
Right. Now we move from the skeleton to the flesh. We are shifting from the structure to the actual content. This is where the real detective work begins.
And the very first rule here is coming to terms. And this hinges on a distinction that, I have to be honest, I've never really thought about before. The difference between a word and a term. I kind of use those as synonyms.
Most people do, but in analytical reading, they are worlds apart. A word is just a grammatical unit. It's a string of letters, and it can be incredibly ambiguous. It can have 5, 6, 10 different meanings. Think of a word like liberal.
Oh boy. Yeah, that's a loaded one.
It is. If you hear the word liberal on a cable news show, it means one specific thing. If you read the phrase liberal arts in a college catalog, it means something completely different.
And if you read John Locke writing about liberalism in the 1600s,
it means something else entirely. So the word liberal is ambiguous, but a term is a word that has been pinned down. It's a word that is being used with a single, specific, defined meaning within a specific context.
So coming to terms is like a negotiation with the author.
It's exactly like a handshake. It's a business agreement. The author is saying, look, for the next 300 pages, when I use the word force, I specifically mean mass times acceleration, nothing else. And the reader has to say, okay, I accept that definition for the duration of this argument.
But what if I don't like their definition? What if I think force should mean, the mystical energy from Star Wars?
Then you aren't actually reading the author's book. You're trying to impose your own mind onto their text. To understand what they're saying, you have to surrender to their terminology, at least temporarily. If you don't come to terms, you're just communicating at cross purposes. The whole thing falls apart.
They use a jigsaw puzzle analogy for this, which I found really helpful.
Yes. Because sometimes an author doesn't come right out and give you a dictionary definition. You have to figure out the term from its context. It's like a puzzle piece. You look at the sentence surrounding the word. You try to fit one possible meaning in. Does it fit? Does the picture start to make sense? If not, you pull it out and try a different definition.
Okay, so once we've shaken hands on the terms, we move to Rule 2. Finding propositions. This is about distinguishing sentences from propositions.
And just like not every word is a term, not every sentence is a proposition. A sentence can be a question, it can be an exclamation, it can be a command.
Pass the salt.
Right. That's a sentence, but it's not a proposition. A proposition is a declaration of judgment. It's a statement that asserts something. It says, this is true or this is false.
So, is the sky blue is a sentence. The sky is blue is a proposition.
Correct. And your job as a reader isn't just to read the sentences, it's to locate the most important sentences, the ones that carry the real weight of the author's judgment, and then you have to translate them.
Translate them into what? Another language.
Into your own words. This is the absolute ultimate test of whether you understand something. The authors say it very clearly. If you can only repeat the author's exact phrasing, you do not understand the proposition. You are just a parrot.
Oh, man, I feel so called out by that. I think I did that for 4 straight years in college. I wrote entire essays where I just rearranged the author's jargon. The ontological parameters of the dialectic suggest I had no idea what I was actually saying.
We have all been there. That is the defeat of the schools kicking in again. Our system often rewards students for parroting complex jargon. But true, active reading demands that you strip away all the fancy words. If you can't explain it in plain English, you haven't really grasped the proposition.
Okay. Rule 3 for interpretation. Locating arguments.
So an argument is simply a sequence of propositions that leads to a conclusion. It's the logic. If A is true and B is also true, then C must logically follow. The reader has to find these threads of reasoning.
And sometimes they're not all in one place.
Rarely. Sometimes an argument is nice and tight. It's all in one paragraph. But in a great book, an argument might be spread out over 10, 20, even 50 pages. You have to actively reconstruct that chain of reasoning. Okay, he established this premise back in chapter 1, and he added this piece of evidence in chapter 3, and that all leads to this big conclusion he's making now in chapter 4.
You're piecing it together. And the final rule for this second reading is determine the solution.
Right, this circles all the way back to the first reading. You identified the problems the author set out to solve. Now, after you've analyzed their key terms and their core arguments, you have to ask, did they actually solve them?
It's the final scorecard for this stage.
It is. Which questions did they answer successfully? Which ones did they fail to solve? And this is a really important part. Did the author themselves admit they failed on any front? A truly great author will often say, I believe I have proven X, but the question of why is still a mystery that I can't solve.
Okay, so let's just do a quick recap. We have X-rayed the book for its structure. We have dissected the flesh and shaken hands on the terms to understand its meaning. We now know what the author is saying and how they're saying it.
We've done our homework.
We have. And now we finally arrive at the part everyone loves to jump to first. The third way of reading, criticism. Or, as the outline puts it so well, the etiquette of talking back.
This is my favorite section because it reframes reading as a true conversation. The authors make the point that reading is a conversation where, ultimately, the reader gets to have the last word.
But, and this is a big but, you have to earn the right to speak.
Yes, there is an etiquette, a set of rules. You can't just barge in and start shouting your opinions.
They use this word that I have to stop you on. They use the word docility. And when I hear docile, I think of a sheep. I think of being submissive and passive. Yes, master, whatever you say. And I thought the whole point of this was to be a critical thinker, not a submissive one.
That word really triggers that reaction in modern ears, doesn't it? But they are using it in its strict original Latin root sense. The Latin word docere just means to teach. So
Okay.
being docile in this context doesn't mean being a doormat. It means being teachable. It means having the discipline and the courtesy to listen fully to the entire argument before you react.
So it's really the opposite of being contentious for the sake of it.
It's the complete opposite. Think about the culture of social media, of Twitter. How often do you see someone quote tweet an article and just furiously attack it when it is painfully obvious they have only read the headline?
Only every single time I open the app. It's the standard operating procedure.
That is a profound lack of docility. It's not intelligent rebellion, it's just noise.
Yeah.
Adler says you must grant the author their say. You must let the teacher teach. Then and only then do you get to render your judgment.
Okay, so what are the general maxims of this polite, critical conversation?
Well, maxim 1 is the absolute golden rule of all intellectual honesty. And it is this. You cannot say, I agree, I disagree, or I suspend judgment until you can first honestly say the words, I understand.
That is a very, very tough standard.
It's incredibly tough. And it would eliminate about 90% of arguments online. If you say, I disagree with this author, but you can't restate their argument accurately and fairly in your own words.
Then you're not disagreeing with the author.
No, you're disagreeing with a straw man, a caricature that you built inside your own head.
Okay, maxim 2. Avoid contentiousness.
This just means don't disagree for the sake of disagreeing. Reading isn't a debate sport where you're trying to score points. It's a mutual pursuit of truth. If the author is right, you have to have the humility to admit it. Don't go hunting for tiny flaws just so you can feel smart.
And maxim 3. You have to give reasons.
Right. If you disagree, you are obligated to explain why. Saying, I don't like this idea or I just feel like this is wrong is not criticism. That is just stating your opinion or your prejudice. You have to point to the evidence or the logic that underpins your disagreement.
This leads to something I found incredibly practical and useful. The authors say there are actually only 4 specific ways you can be right in disagreeing. You can't just say a vague, you're wrong. You have to specify the exact type of error the author has made.
Yes, this is a brilliant framework. It forces you to be so precise in your thinking. The first way you can disagree is to say, you are uninformed.
What does that mean exactly, that they're ignorant?
It means the author is lacking a specific piece of knowledge that is relevant to the problem they're trying to solve. For example, when Aristotle is writing about biology in ancient Greece, he is uninformed about the circulation of the blood. Harvey hadn't discovered it yet.
So Aristotle wasn't stupid, he just didn't have the data.
Exactly. And if he had had that data, his conclusions about anatomy would have likely changed.
Okay. The second way to disagree. You are misinformed.
This is different. This means the author is asserting something as a fact that is actually incorrect. Their data is wrong. So if our author writes, the population of France is 10 million, you can say, you are misinformed. A quick check shows it's actually over 60 million. That's a factual error.
So uninformed is missing data. Misinformed is having the wrong data.
Correct. The third way to disagree, you are illogical.
Okay, so this is a flaw in the reasoning itself.
Yes. This is where you point out a fallacy, a non sequitur. You say, your premise in chapter A is fine, and your premise in chapter B is fine, but your conclusion C does not follow from them. Or you can point out an inconsistency. You said X on page 10, but you said the opposite of X on page 50. You're pointing out a structural flaw in their thinking.
And the fourth and final way, your analysis is incomplete.
This means the author didn't actually solve all the problems they set out to solve at the beginning. You can say, you gave a brilliant account of the military battles of the war, but you completely failed to address the economic causes you promised to explain.
I really like how precise that framework is. It takes all the emotion and personal attack out of it. You aren't just shouting, you're wrong. You're diagnosing the argument. You're saying your reasoning in chapter 3 is illogical, or your analysis is incomplete because you overlooked this factor.
Exactly. It turns a potential fight into a productive dialectic. It allows you to respect the author as a thinker, even while you are methodically proving them wrong on a specific point.
Now, we've been talking mostly about nonfiction books here, philosophy, science, history. But section 5 of the book covers variations and specifically how we should approach fiction. I mean, do we really X-ray a novel? Do we look for terms and propositions in a poem? That just feels so mechanical.
It would be mechanical, and it would completely kill the joy. The authors are very clear that the rules have to be adapted. We don't read fiction for knowledge in the same way we read science. We read it for experience.
So the rules need to be translated.
They need to be translated. So instead of classifying a book by its subject matter, like history versus science, you classify it by its genre. Is it a novel, a play, a lyric poem? The form matters more.
And instead of stating the unity as a problem the author is trying to solve,
You summarize the plot. What is the core narrative engine of the story? Instead of enumerating the parts as logical steps in an argument, you outline the narrative arc, the beginning, the middle, the climax, the resolution.
And what about criticism? You can't really tell a novelist they're misinformed. Hey, Mr. Shakespeare, you're misinformed. Ghosts aren't actually real.
Right, that would be absurd. The central maxim of criticism translates to something they say beautifully: don't criticize a pudding until you've tasted it.
I like that.
You shouldn't start criticizing a novel until you have first fully surrendered to and appreciated the experience the author was trying to create. You don't ask, is it factually true? You ask if it rings true to the human experience. Does it possess what we call poetic truth?
The book also touches on using extrinsic aids. This means using stuff outside the book itself: commentaries, introductions, Wikipedia summaries.
And the rule here is very strict and very important. Intrinsic first, extrinsic second. Always. Always read the book itself before you read what other people have to say about the book.
I am so guilty of breaking this rule. I almost always read the introduction first.
Almost everyone does. But think about what the introduction usually is. It's written by a different scholar or critic, and it's telling you what to think about the book before you've even read it.
You're letting someone else do the X-ray for you.
You're letting someone else chew your food for you. You are completely prejudicing your own fresh reading of the text. The rule is, read the book. Struggle with it. Form your own analysis. Then, after you've done the work, go to the commentaries and the critics to see if you missed anything or to challenge your own interpretation.
But they do talk about this idea of the great conversation.
Yes. This is the one place where extrinsic reading is vital. Books talk to each other across centuries. And understanding a book by, say, Alexander Hamilton becomes much, much easier if you've also read the books that Hamilton himself read, like John Locke or Montesquieu.
So you can see the influences and the arguments he's responding to.
You see the conversation unfolding. One author is directly answering another, sometimes hundreds of years later.
Which brings us to the final big section: the great books themselves. The authors are famous for championing this idea of the Western canon. But what actually makes a book great in their eyes? Is it just that it's old and dusty and sits on a fancy shelf?
No, age is not the defining factor at all. And this is where, frankly, a lot of people get intimidated. You say the words great books, and people immediately picture a stuffy, exclusive library and just feeling stupid.
Right, it feels inaccessible.
But Adler lists a few characteristics that are actually surprisingly democratic and inviting. First, he says, great books are original communications. They are the primary teachers. They aren't digests or summaries or textbooks about a subject. They are the source.
Okay.
Second, and this is the one that really blows people's minds, they argue that great books are written for beginners.
That feels completely wrong. I think of great books as being for tenured professors in ivory towers.
Adler argues the complete opposite. He says these books were written for ordinary, intelligent people, not for specialists. Plato was writing for the citizens of Athens, not for other philosophy professors. Shakespeare was writing for the common groundlings in the pit.
So they're not written in academic jargon.
No. They address the permanent, universal human problems: love, justice, death, the nature of government. They are written in human language. The third characteristic is that they are inexhaustible.
Meaning you can read them more than once.
And get something new every time. You can read a book like Gulliver's Travels as a 10-year-old and enjoy the funny story about giants and tiny people. You can read it again as a college student and understand the biting political satire. You can read it at 60 and see a profound meditation on human nature. The book grows with you.
So why does all this matter? I mean, let's be honest. We have the internet now. We have podcasts like this one. Why should anyone go through all this incredible effort to X-ray and interpret these old, difficult books? The authors make a pretty bold claim about politics here.
They do, and this is the ultimate so what of the entire deep dive. They argue very forcefully that this kind of deep critical literacy is absolutely essential for the survival of a democracy.
The defense against demagogues.
Exactly. Think about what a demagogue or a propagandist does. They use slippery, undefined terms. They use illogical arguments that appeal to emotion rather than reason. They rely on the audience being a passive, uncritical recipient.
A bucket.
Just a bucket. If you cannot read critically, if you can't spot an illogical argument or catch when a term has been subtly redefined or expose a misinformed premise, then you are completely susceptible to manipulation.
You're not a free citizen.
You're not. You are a subject of whoever happens to be the most persuasive speaker or the loudest voice in the room.
So learning to read well, according to them, is actually a form of political self-defense.
It is the ultimate self-defense. They argue that true freedom isn't just doing whatever you feel like doing. True freedom is freedom through discipline. The classical liberal arts grammar, logic, rhetoric are called liberal because they liberate the mind. They free you from prejudice, from unexamined opinion, and from being controlled by silver-tongued orators.
That is such a powerful idea. That a good society, what they call a community of friends, is built on the foundation of people being able to communicate intelligently with each other.
If we can't understand each other's deepest and most complex thoughts, we can't really be a community. We're just a collection of people living next to each other, shouting past one another.
So we've gone on quite a journey here. From the idea of actively catching the ball, to seeing the skeleton of a book structure, to shaking hands on terms, and finally to politely but firmly arguing back with the author.
It really is the journey from being a passive recipient of information to becoming a master of the craft of reading.
I want to end on a final provocative thought that comes directly from the source material. The authors suggest that many of us today, maybe even most of us, are in fact readers who cannot read. We read what is easy. We read what confirms our biases. We read headlines and snippets on our phones.
We stay on the ground floor.
We stay on the ground floor. And the challenge they issue is this. If you pick up a book and you fully and easily understand it on page 1, you haven't really learned anything. You've only been informed. You've only had your existing knowledge confirmed.
There's no growth in that.
No growth at all. They suggest that the only way to stretch your mind, the only way to actually grow intellectually, is to deliberately read a book that is over your head.
That is the only way the intellectual muscle can grow. It must be strained. You have to reach for something that is just out of your grasp.
So here is our challenge to you, the listener. Go to your bookshelf or go to the library. Find that one great book that you've always been a little bit afraid of, the one you told yourself is too hard or too dense. Maybe it's Moby Dick, maybe it's The Republic, maybe it's something else entirely.
Whatever it is that intimidates you.
Pick it up. And don't just scan it. Don't just let the words wash over you while you think about other things.
Catch the ball.
Catch the ball. X-ray the skeleton. Come to terms with the author. And then once you've truly understood it, have the courage to talk back and argue with it.
It's a lifelong practice.
It really is. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.
Happy reading.